today is all about Elijah. This is a powerful story that we're jumping into for this first reading. Elijah has now fled. He's in flight from Israel and all of the enemies he's made there. And he flees from there to the wilderness, to Mount Horeb, to take shelter. And while he's there, he commiserates and he complains to God. He asks to die because things are so incredibly hopeless. He's in a state of emotional turmoil. And on top of that, one scripture scholar by the name of Jerome Walsh says that Elijah is not just going from civilization to the wilderness. He's on a journey apart from the ordinary world. He has left behind food. He has left behind companionship. And he's alone in the desert. Elijah, to me, is the great biblical example of the sage archetype. A sage is a person of great wisdom and vision. The classic picture of a sage, is a wrinkly old man with long gray hair and a scraggly gray beard and one gross milky white blind eye. That's him. And the reason for that is he can see the physical world with one eye, and he can see the spirit world in that other eye. So he's seeing things that the rest of us can't. He's a mystic. And the price he pays is he doesn't have as strong of a connection with the ordinary world. Okay? So the sage is too busy with these spiritual realities. He doesn't care about washing his hair. He doesn't care about trimming his beard. He's probably not even cooking his food. And for that, some people respect the sage, most people fear him, and a few hate him. And I'm saying all this to give you an idea of who Elijah was. He was a man of true emotional turmoil because of what had been going on in his time. And he was a man trapped between two worlds, the ordinary world and this world of a spiritual reality that no one else could really appreciate like him. And that means that he was in a good state. He was ready and able and holy enough to learn something new about the spiritual reality of life and the world and of God. And what he learned is our first reading. And what he learned sent him right back to the territory of his enemies with greater faith and greater courage. To give you a little refresher, a strong and heavy wind was rending the mountains, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake there was fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. After the fire there was a tiny whispering sound. Strong wind, earthquake, fire. These are powers of nature, and they're the traditional manifestations of God. Whether you know it or not, we actually think like this. Which way is heaven, up or down? We think of it as up. What's a holier place, the bank or the park? What do you want on your wedding day, sunshine or hail? Everyone's got an opinion about that one, I'm sure. The point is, we credit God with some things more than others. Okay, we appreciate God in the sunset. When it's hailing on your wedding day, you're probably not praising God in the same way. The Jews of Elijah's time were the same way. If God is going to teach us something, he's going to do it with an earthquake, with fire, or with strong wind. Think of the burning bush in Moses. Think of the parting of the Red Sea by a strong east wind. It was common thought for the time. And this reading takes all those assumptions and brushes them aside and goes deeper. God is not in the fire. God is not in the wind. God is not in the earthquake. God is in the tiny, whispering sound. God's sometimes not where we expect him. Sometimes we need to seek God out in the place we least expect to find him. It's easy enough to see the glory of God in the beauty of fireworks. How can you ignore them? They're fireworks. But God's presence, God's glory is just as much in a well-written book with a plain cover, or in the delightful and thoughtful details in the background of your favorite movie. Dare I say it, it's also in that spark that I know that some of you get when you take communion. There's some of you here who know exactly what I mean. Maybe even many of you. God's in the small stuff. God's in the tiny, whispering sound. We get big flashes of God every once in a while, if we're lucky. But we need to quiet down sometimes. We need to go on a journey from the ordinary world like Elijah. We need to hear that tiny, whispering sound, the parts of life that we may have been neglecting. I realize that this is a silly homily for today. Between the parish picnic and the groundbreaking ceremony, there is not going to be much quiet today. I can promise you there will be fire. Hopefully not an earthquake. That would not be a good sign. But when the parish festival is over, you're all going to go home, and you'll climb into bed, and quiet will return to your life once more. That quiet is precious. More precious than we often give it credit for. Listen to that quiet. Listen for the tiny, whispering voice. And know that it's speaking to you and you alone.